Welcome, everybody. It is the March edition of the Frontline, the official KARDS podcast. I, Christo, am here, as always, with my wonderful co-host, Elin. Elin, why don't you walk us through what we're going to be talking about today?
Thank you so much, Christo. So excited to be here today. We're going to be talking about the new KARDS user interface, which has just launched for all users. And of course, it's a very kind of important milestone for us. We've been testing this for a couple of weeks now in a public test branch. And here to talk about the new user interface, we have our UI UX designers from the Reykjavik, Iceland office. We have Frikki. And from the office in Helsinki, Finland, we have Juha. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is now the first appearance of somebody from the Finland office on the podcast. So no pressure, Juha. You're just representing an entire country right now. No big deal. While we get into this topic, I mean, is it worth, having our two gentlemen here maybe give a little introduction as to who they are and their involvement with this? So, Juha, since, again, you're representing the entire Finnish population, why don't you go first and just give us a quick 30-second introduction of your role with 1939 and within the UI project?
Yeah, I'm Juha, and as mentioned, I'm part of the Helsinki office. So, as some of you might know, 1939 founded this Helsinki office about 2 years ago, with the mission of moving KARDS to mobile. And I joined a bit over 1 year ago as what's my title? Senior UA UX designer. And yeah, I've been mostly working in mobile version of the UI, and yeah, what else to say? That's about it.
Thank you, Juha. You mentioned mobile, which is a hot topic in the KARDS community, so I'm sure we'll be coming back to that at least once this podcast. Frikki, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay. So I'm Frikki, and I've been working for 1939 Games for about over a year. I started in January of last year. First, I started just working in the old UI, knowing that there would be some changes coming up. But then I think in March last year, when Juha started, we flew to Helsinki to sync up. Was it in March? Juha, do you remember?
Yeah, I think in March, or is it early April? Not sure.
Yeah, somewhere around that. Yeah, we flew. Me and Kumi flew to Helsinki to sync up with Juha and see what we could do with the UI and what we needed to change.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess to kind of get a little bit of an introduction, and this goes out to anybody, any of the two guests or Elin, if you want to jump in as well. So what prompted this? Hey, we need to change the UI because the old UI has been around for a while. Seems to work fine. Everything looks pretty good. What kind of kicked off this? Hey, we need to change this up.
I can take that. So you might or might not remember those who were part of the first internal beta on mobile. So this was a year ago, about what was it, April? And if you remember, that actually used the old UI on mobile. So it wasn't always like this, but going forwards with the game, we started realizing that the old UI, it's very pretty, it's simple, it's beautiful in that sense. It's not perfectly suited for mobile, and also there is a reason that, we're moving forwards with the game. We want to bring in new features. We want to do all kinds of new stuff, and the old UI doesn't really stretch well. So if you have the icons on screen, and that's basically it. So when you're adding new features, you're just adding new icons, basically ad infinitum. So we wanted something that we sat down and thought about it and figured that we actually want something that is more flexible in the sense that you can add features, you can easily structure it in a way that supports more expandability.
We also wanted to just bring more like news and things to the players, because we don't have our own, what's it called when you start your game. But so with the new UI, we can bring the players news of what's about to happen and what's upcoming, and with all sort of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, if I can add a little bit to this as well, I mean, like the limitations of the old UI, I think have especially become clear kind of as the game has grown. And, there were times where we had players asking like, where do I even go into a skirmish? Kind of a couple of months after skirmishes started, just because it's just very unclear on the front page where it is. So it kind of it's a little bit difficult to expand it, and especially as the game is growing, it has kind of shown its flaws a little bit more. And so this is a really kind of I think a big kind of future proofing, and certainly also feedback that we've received kind of throughout the years. About, for example, the deck builder, kind of an opportunity to improve on a lot of those elements at the same time for users, regardless of whether you're on mobile or PC.
So making sure my fat fingers will press the right buttons when I'm on mobile is important. Got it. Elin, you mentioned something last episode that I want to touch on again, just so we can get this out of the way and then move on. But you had mentioned, because we talked about mobile coming and a timeline, and you said there would be a roadmap coming soon that would spell some of that out. I'm just wondering when soon is, if you can give us a little insight there.
It's like super soon.
So sooner than it was last time.
A lot sooner. We're talking like the next couple of weeks. We'll have an updated roadmap for you. Of course, we have a lot of kind of really important milestones on our roadmap. So it's definitely, we've really wanted to make sure that that we had a good idea of what the timeline for the year looked like before we start to communicate that to our players. So that's kind of why it's taken a little bit longer than we maybe would have liked, but we will have it, as I say, super soon.
Awesome. You heard it here first. Sooner than last time soon.
Thank you for bearing with us.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. So back to the UI, you're releasing something pretty much brand new. It looks very, very different, very clean compared to the last one. Everything kind of has its space. Were there specific things that jumping into it, you said, hey, we need to make this front and center. We need to clean this up specifically. You mentioned some feedback, Elin. You mentioned, wanting to have some news out there, Frikki. Is there something specific you said, hey, we need to start here and make this really clean and then build off of it?
Like every area, pretty much. It's like you look at the screen and you realize that we'd like to do this, we'd like to do that, and as Frikki mentioned, what is very important is the front page, obviously, so we can bring people news and stuff like this. But also, simply, I would maybe point out the play menu, which is like previously you had different ways of actually entering the in-game battle. In the UI, you would go click that, click this, click the skirmish button at the corner, and that is, I think, like if I'm not wrong, Frikki, that was like the first thing we kind of wanted to do. That okay, to go play, you follow this, like always the same kind of route to find out your favorite game mode.
Yeah, and we wanted to have the last deck you played selected. Like once you finish a game, you there's now just one click to play again if you want to. And like for me, when I lose, I automatically just press play again. Just I want to go back. But in the old UI, I would maybe like just go through the motions or just stop playing. And also you can edit your deck right away. You don't have to go to the main menu, go to another selection. You can just edit it right there if you need to change it.
So it sounds like you're talking about the UI being a lot more intuitive than before. Juha, you brought up the skirmish button that just looked like it kind of got slapped onto the top corner there. So now hey, I want to play a game. I'm going to click the play button. And now I have all of my options of what I want to do. There's also, I believe, a toggle, right, for friendly or casual, for ranked or casual. So it makes it a lot easier as well for the players to go in and say, hey, I know what I'm doing now. I want to play, a ranked match or not so much. You were also talking.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention as well. That was something that as I'm joining the company, the toggle for kind of whether you're playing a ranked or casual match is not super clear. And it took me a while to figure out how to play a ranked game. And that was feedback that we received from the community as well. Sometimes we'd have new players and they're just like, where are all my stars? And it's like, oh, well, you didn't hit the little tick box. So making that a bit clearer and a bit more obvious was definitely important, I think.
Awesome. And then from a deck perspective, Frikki, you talked about, you're automatically queue in with your previous deck. Now you can also favorite decks. You can also, I believe they're also going to be sorted differently as well.
Yes, I believe we will sort it. The favorites will go on top, but then the last played deck will also be on top. Like if you play a deck you haven't favorite, that would go on top after the favorited decks. So you don't have to scroll all the way down, or like in the old UI, you would have to flip 3 times to get to the last deck you created because you don't want to delete the old ones.
So those players who just have a laundry list of decks can now go in, prioritize their favorites, and easily find the ones they want to go ahead and use regularly, which, like you said, makes it so much easier to just hit like, hey, I want to play again. I want to get back in the game. And at the end of the day, I imagine that's one of the things you think about behind a UI is how quickly can we get people to where they want to go. And for cards, you feel like that's getting into the game, into a game you want to play.
Exactly.
So you talked a little bit as well about making sure the news is front and center. I imagine that is part of kind of the carousel design you were talking about, where now you got to log in, you have that right in your face. Hey, here's what's going on in the world of cards. What is that? And Elin, this might be more directed at you. What's that going to be used for in the future?
So we have kind of a number of things that we will be highlighting. I think that mainly you can expect in the carousel to be kind of finding both kind of like useful articles, especially right now we're pointing to, for example, the Cards Academy, we're pointing to some decks. So this could be especially useful for newer players. But certainly we'll also have kind of important milestones, important news that are happening. And of course, this is really important from sort of a community standpoint. If we have something kind of coming up, then we want to make sure that we're telling our players about it in a way that they don't miss it. And it is very easy to miss a Steam announcement or an article on the cards.com website. So having this way incline of communicating these things to people is really important for us. And then we also have, aside from the content carousel, which is sort of front and center with all its beautiful artwork, we've got on the right-hand side, we've got these buttons, which are also kind of interchangeable a little bit. They can be kind of shortcuts to game modes or shortcuts to other things within the client, but at certain times they can also point to other content, to signups for esports events and things like that, just to make sure that people are aware and that they can more easily access all this other stuff that we're doing that might not be super obvious otherwise within the client.
So instead of having to figure out, hey, is that on Steam or their Twitter account or in their Discord, you have one spot for everything. And it's kind of front and center when you log in. Now,
Exactly.
Elin, you also talked about those buttons on the right side. So it feels like everything else in this UI has its place and its purpose. And now you mentioned kind of those right side buttons, which, don't get me wrong, very convenient, signing up for esports events and things like that. How do you make sure that's not confusing, since they are going to be, changing and rotating based on whatever is going on in the game at the time?
It's a good question. Do you guys want to take this one? I mean, of course, yeah, go ahead, Juha.
Yeah, that is a good question. So like from our let's say technical point of view, the mission was to give us, especially like Elin and our publishing department, basically like tools to do whatever they want, and whatever we want to put there, we can interchangeably or like we can change the contents of those side buttons. So the charge buttons, they might be a bit more persistent than, for example, the carousel that can change more often.
I mean, we've got the left side, which is persistent, which is always going to be the same stuff. The right side is, something that it can change. It will maybe not change as often as the content in the center. But we do feel like this is also important to be able to rotate occasionally, because we do have things such as the skirmishes, which is going to be one of those buttons. So when they're live, just like you would access skirmishes, if you've gotten used to in the old UI being able to just click that one button, that will be accessible there. So, of course, there is a little bit of room for confusion, but hopefully our players will get used to it.
And also, just if players are getting confused in these right side buttons, we just have to listen to them and make adjustments to them and to the design, and just listen to what the people are saying and try to get it right.
Absolutely. I mean, that's another great point. I mean, we had this test period of about 2 weeks where we had a branch on Steam, which was kind of like a public branch. Anyone could go into it and test it out. And we created this the new user interface facility on Discord, which was receiving feedback, bug reports, all kinds of stuff. And that was just invaluable for us, for the whole development team, in being able to, both, of course, on the bug front, to make sure that we're kind of that everything is running as smoothly as it can, and that we're identifying all the issues, but also just to hear the feedback from people and being like, well, this is a bit confusing, and what if this was like that, and a lot of that stuff has been taken into account. A lot of stuff is still kind of making its way onto lists of things we want to polish or tweak in the future. So we're so incredibly grateful to the community for having provided all their feedback and insights on this.
And within that test and that feedback, was there anything persistent that came out, either good or bad, that you were hearing often that, hey, this is great, or yeah, this I can't find this, other than, hey, this has changed and I'm not sure how I feel about it yet? Because I think that's inevitable anytime you roll out something new.
I mean, there's definitely been like a bit of good and bad. I think that something that I've actually been noticing quite a bit, just in the last actually few days, has been people being a little bit confused, for example, about how you scroll between the campaigns. So when you're kind of looking at your campaigns, you have to kind of hover over where the actual boxes are and then use your scroll wheel. So that's something that was like a little bit confusing for users, and a ton of people figured it out. But a lot of people were also just, how do I scroll between this? So that's, for example, one element that's already exists as a ticket of something that we're going to be looking at and polishing or tweaking somehow going forward to make that kind of clearer. That's kind of like the one thing that really stands out, because I heard that quite a few times in the last few days. There's also a little bit of confusion for people about kind of the deck ordering, but I also think that that's just because it's something quite new, and so people who are used to the game, who are used to flipping through to the third page and seeing their deck right there, they're just kind of like, whoa, where's my deck? Because it was the last one you played, so now it's at the top. So I think there's definitely a few things like that both that people will kind of get used to, but also definitely things that we can look into tweaking. But yeah, those are the main things I've been noticing. I don't know, Frikki and Juha, if there's some things that you've especially noticed as of late.
Well, I haven't gone deep into the comments right away, because we've still been fixing things that we knew were wrong. We've been looking at it, but not. What would you say, like diving deep into it, because we want to stay on course. And now when it's out, we can start focusing more on that and seeing what comes up often. But I also we focus more on the bad stuff than the good stuff, but we are also getting good feedback. And for example, just the deck builder, when people are starting to I want to be able to do this and this should be better, and there needs to be more space between these things, then you think, okay, so since they're going to the nitty-gritty of things, that we must be doing something right with the overall look. So we try to find positives as well.
Yeah, and my thanks to all the feedback too. Like, believe it or not, we do read it. Yeah. We do read all the feedback. It's just we are developing it as we go. So even if there is like a super good idea, for example, this sorting thing, like I definitely want to have maybe sorting options, alphabetical, last played, and this kind of stuff. But that's not a promised feature, but definitely very good feedback. Definitely something we would like to do. And there's gazillion examples of the same kind of really good feedback that like once you read it, you instantly know, yes, this is what we want to do. But no promises on when these will happen. But yeah, definitely that kind of stuff. And even if the feedback, the person is like salty and grumpy, like this is so bad, there might be a very good message somewhere there that, hey, okay, guy doesn't really like this, but we can definitely actually improve this area, even if we don't do like it exactly that or this or the other way. There is definitely, like, all feedback is good feedback, as they say.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't condone salty feedback in the Discord channel, but if it happens, it will be read. And Elin, to that point, right? The Discord channel is still open. You can still go in there, drop in your feedback about the new UI.
Please do.
You heard it.
Absolutely, yeah. It will remain open for the next several weeks, as we're people are getting used to the new UI. So please come, let us know what you think. As you can hear, we are reading it. We definitely take it into account.
Awesome. And I want to touch on one more specific thing around the design piece, and that is the deck builder, because I do feel like it has gone through quite a change. And I was looking at the show notes, and we're talking about, it being intuitive to people who've come from other card games. And I think the cards, the old UI, the deck builder was very simple and worked fine, but it was also a bit of a project to scroll through all of your cards, and you're flipping pages at a time. And now you've got a little bit more of a sleek and elegant way of going about sorting through your collection. Where did that mentality come from, and how did you decide to build out the deck builder the way it is in the new UI?
I can take this. When I started here, like in January last year, one of the first thing was like, okay, so when are we gonna redesign the deck builder? Because we've been getting a lot of feedback that players weren't seeing enough cards, and they weren't getting a good enough overview of the deck they were building. So we did quite a research of like how other games were doing it, and just we also wanted to make it easy for new players, both just new to card games and coming in from other card games, to make it kind of familiar, so they wouldn't have to teach them everything right away. In the new deck builder also, we have this filter button that brings up more filters, and now we can add to that. So we're not limited on the space, because that scrolls up and down, and we can add more filters if we get new ideas. And we've already started to get new ideas about new filters, like only showing the cards that you have put in your deck in the big screen, and also only showing unknown cards and stuff like that. So we'll be making more filters and making it more easy for people to build their decks.
Awesome. I want to add another layer to that, because I know that the theme of World War II is very important as you're building out the game, the UI, all of it. Was there ever this back and forth as well around, we want to make it nicer and cleaner and more elegant or prettier, but we also want to keep it as like a little bit of a simplistic 1940s vibe? Is there ever that kind of back and forth of, we want to do some things, but we also don't want to make it too polished? We want to give it a little bit of that like rugged look at the same time?
Frikki, you want to take
I mean, definitely. And Gummi, the creator of the game, he's really strict about this. It has to be like a World War II game, and he keeps on telling us, you know what the color, like the official color of the World War II is? Gray. so like me and Juha and I are like designers, and we want to put color everywhere and stuff like that. Of course we would like to add something like that, but yeah, we have to keep it simple and make it look like you're playing cards in 1939, and hopefully we're doing that well.
You definitely have to play in those earth tones, the grays and the browns and the dark greens. And I can imagine that could be a challenge as well, when you were saying, hey, we did some research with other card games, but a lot of other card games are focused around magic and colors and sorcery and wizards. Like, this doesn't translate one-to-one into what we're trying to do here.
Oh
yeah, that's actually something very, very good to mention. Like, others have the option of putting all kinds of sparkles and glowy stuff and this kind of stuff that we really don't actually want in the game. We don't want stuff really magically glowing and stuff like this. So it's a different approach to for example, what Frikki mentioned about colors and things like this. So we're trying to keep it, as you said, and tone down in these earth tones and still be functional.
Yeah. Absolutely. Was there anything, as you're going through this new UI design now, that it's kind of rolled out to the masses and you're looking back at it? And I guess this goes out to both of you, and maybe each of you have your own thought around this. Is there something specific you're very proud of, how it looks, how it works, something you're like, yeah, you know what, this is so much better than it was before, and I'm really happy with how it turned out?
I haven't given this a thought.
All of it is so much. You're so happy with it.
Yeah, something like that.
Something. I mean, that's the thing. The change is pretty drastic. I mean, if you compare it, the whole thing is so much more, or so different. I wouldn't say more, but just different. The like basic concept is very different from what it used to be. You used to click on icons and get to some other screen and go from there. And now we have this sort of like more structured and categorized thing. But I would say that, even though we lose our huge, beautiful background images, we still manage to have a lot of visual stuff going on. Also, we have the front page with still a lot of cool art, and it even changes. So you have even more cool art if you look at it from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly usable now, and gets maybe a bit of time to get used to. But once you have gotten used to it, I think it's very fluid to use and quick, and also works nicely on like different screen ratios and sizes, mobile and big screens and wide screens and on high screens. So yeah, that is actually like one of the biggest missions for us in Helsinki, because the old UI was strictly PC UI, designed for like a fairly certain kind of screen shape and size. And this is actually something that some PC users might notice, that the new UI might be a bit more responsive if they're using it on like let's say a bit unusual PC monitor that some people still have or have on purpose, for example.
And I imagine that applies doubly to mobile as well, where you have phone screens that vary in size, in aspect ratio, and everything else. So having something that scales up and down based on what you're playing on, whether that's a phone, whether that's a tablet, whether that's a PC, and you have a very similar usable experience, is really important in the rollout of KARDS Mobile.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we've done so far, it is very flexible, and this is again not a promise, but we from the get-go had the plan to also, because for example, our feedback from the first mobile beta was that everything is really small or that everything is big or whatever. there's a lot of older folks, or anyway, folks with not that great vision, for example, and they said that okay, these icons are really small, and even maybe that these are even too small on PC and so on. And this is also something that we now have a lot more control for. So if we get that to a very solid level, we might even introduce it for PC users to change UI size, and then you'll have like a dynamic choice. So if you like bigger stuff on screen, for example, or just want to make things a bit smaller, you should be able to do this. But if going back to the question about mobile, yes, it is like it's a jungle. Like it's not only for example, Apple devices, those are pretty set in stone. You have this kind of screens on phone and this kind of screens on tablets. But then if you go to like Android, you have a complete jungle of everything. There is like no limit to the types of screens you have, so, and sizes of screens, aspect ratios, and everything. So there is of course a compromises to be made on that front, but yeah, I think we are fairly well off on that regard now. We fairly well support like the really wide and the fairly thin ones and everything. So yeah, I think that is something we've been working on quite a bit.
Awesome. So as I mean, as we're kind of getting towards the end of this, Elin, is there anything I missed? You work with these two gentlemen a lot, quite closely. So anything you want to make sure that we highlight or we bring up when it comes to the new UI?
I think you've done a really good job of addressing a lot of these kind of key questions. Of course, I want to mention that there are still some things, ahead. The UI is not completely necessarily. I mean, we've done a lot of these kind of big overhauls. There's a bit of room for tweaking and polishing within the kind of elements that have been pushed out now, but there are also some potential changes coming forward, which I was discussing with Gummi the other day. Some changes kind of within the battle scene, which are to kind of make things a lot clearer. So maybe you guys could tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on what the upcoming changes in the battle scene might be.
You want to take this, or should I?
Well, I can take it a bit, and you can continue a bit.
Yeah.
For example, yeah. Well, the battle scene from the get-go wasn't something that we really wanted to touch a lot. Just make it. If there is something that we wanted to do there, then consider it. But that is definitely was working fairly well, like a year ago as well. So it wasn't something that we're gonna overhaul this as well, because why try to do that? Why try to fix something that isn't really broken? But there will be some upcoming changes there. We've identified some issues, for example, with the little icons denoting the states of the cards and stuff like this. So you might see them change a bit, be maybe a bit more informational and easier to distinguish, for instance. And as for the look of the screen, yeah, we might do a little bit there too. We might change it to match the look of the new menus a bit, but don't be afraid there won't be any super drastic changes to the look. Maybe just something.
We won't change the gameplay that much. We will also try to overhaul the history. Need to make it easier for mobile, and also just make it more understandable. And there are some issues with it, and we'll try to fix them. It's a big task. We started it like a while ago, and we shelved it because we were going on mobile, and and with the new UI, and it's a big task. It's going to be hard, but we want to make it understandable, and we want to make sure that people can go there and see what happens, not just like in some cases you get, oh, he played that and that happened, and then you get this like 8 cards and you don't know what happened to them. So we want to make that more clear, and just make the UI help people, but instead of just
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that sometimes, we even have kind of bug reports, or people think that some big issues happened because, there's kind of been a train of events with some effects of cards, and you don't quite, the history isn't sort of maybe descriptive enough that you entirely grasp what's happened. So I definitely think that clarification in that stage is going to be very useful. We also have potentially some changes to the shop coming up, which I've discussed this briefly with our CMO Ingo, and that's a big secret right now. So, but it at this point in time, I think that some players have pointed out that the shop kind of feels like it maybe doesn't fit super well in with the new UI, and so in a few months we're probably going to see that fit in a lot better, and some changes related to that. So those are kind of the main things that I wanted to highlight. And I mean, I have to say, I'm so proud of these guys. I know that I had nothing to do with the design other than just testing it and enjoying it. The old UI that we had, as you mentioned earlier, it was beautiful in so many ways. But this was a great opportunity to do some improvements, and I'm so proud of this team for getting to this point and rolling out this beautiful new UI. And certainly the improvements on I think the deck builder are some of my favorite that I think are gonna really be good in the long haul.
And it's normal, right? The original UI was built for a game that had less features, less functions, was simpler. You're mentioning the match history, great example. As you add keywords and different pieces to it, well, we didn't think of how we would represent that in something like a play history. So there's lots to do to just keep it up to speed with what's currently going on in the game. And I think you've both done a wonderful job of putting that together, because just from the look, it's nice to refresh things every now and again as well, and getting something fresh and new when you load up cards feels really nice, at least from a player perspective. Who's been around for a little while. It's really cool to jump into something new, and I totally agree, Elin. The deck builder is a breath of fresh air to me. It's fun to play around versus a little bit of a project to scroll through. So awesome features, awesome functions. I'm super excited to get into it a little bit more and continue to play with it, as I'm sure a lot of the folks out there are as well. So as we get ready to wrap this show up, Juha, Frikki, any last words you'd like to mention? Anything you'd like to put out there to the community while you've got them listening in?
Well, as Elin mentioned, there is also new stuff coming in, and in general, Cards is a live game. It's constantly being developed. So this is the very base of the new UI, and going forwards, there will be new stuff, and keep that feedback coming. Some of it might get in even. And as like you mentioned, the shop, yes, the old shop is still there. It's basically the shop as you know it, and that will certainly see some facelift, but it's not something we are allowed to speak about at this point, I think. But I'd like to maybe highlight other areas that are there. For example, you mentioned their match history. Yes, very much wished for feature, and we now have this new area completely, that is the profile. Maybe that is something that fits together at some point. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, keep the feedback coming, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for their feedback and on the game, on the tests, and it's so funny. Because I've worked on projects that don't have this base of players you can just access. It's so good to have just ship something out, and then you just have Discord, and everyone's willing to give their feedback, and we're listening to it, and we want it. And I mean, I mean, we're just a small team and just a couple of UI designers and trying to do our best, but having feedback makes the product better, the game better. And it's just going to be like when you give us your feedback, we will try to listen to it and see what comes up often, and we will try to make the game better. It helps a lot. So just please keep giving us your feedback. Also good feedback.
It's true. We like to focus on the critical feedback, but every now and again saying, "Hey, we like this," is also very welcome. So keep the feedback coming. Thank you both so much for coming and hanging out with us on the Frontline podcast. Elin, always a pleasure. Any parting words on your part?
Thank you guys again so much for the feedback, because it has really been invaluable. I feel like it's worth mentioning it again and again. And as the guys say, both the negatives and the positives, I know that change is hard. We had a great UI before, but this is a foundation for the future, creating kind of like this rock solid UI that we can expand. And I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future. And thank you guys all so much for being a part of this journey with us, and for giving us your input, and for letting us adjust things along with your thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elin. Thank you to all of you for listening to The Frontline, and check us out next month for a brand new episode.